Okay guys, so in this tutorial I'm going to go over a simple kind of program. So basically I just had an interview and they had a kind of, the first interview was basically a simple program, kind of like a screening. Just basically the method was to remove all vowels from a string. So I thought this would be a nice video to make for the channel. So I'm going to go ahead and code out how you would remove the vowels from a string. Okay, so I'm in Eclipse here, and I have already created a folder and a package called test, and I'm just going to name this class dummy. Going to be a pretty simple program here, and there's going to be two main ways that you can implement this method. One is going to be to use the replaceAll method in the string class, so that makes work pretty easy. But in an interview, they're going to want you to also implement kind of the brute force way to show that you know logic and that you can't. I mean, any person can just kind of hop on the internet and look up a simple method to implement that does all the work for you, but they want to look for some logic and some brute force code. Okay, so let's start out just making our main method. Now in this tutorial I'm also going to go over every little piece of code um, just to assume that you are a beginner in Java. Okay, so public static void main string args. Okay, so right now I'm just creating the main method, and for the beginner people watching this video, the main method is going to be kind of like the driver code. Basically what that means is when your compiler goes line by line to run this code, and then when the program actually executes, it is going to find the main method. It is going to search for the main method because the main method is going to be what drives the program. Because we're going to be creating methods outside of the main method, or the main driver program. We're going to be creating a couple methods up here, two different versions that remove vowels. Those methods won't be called or executed unless you call them from the main method. And I'll explain more of that when we get some more code written here. Okay, so first, let's go ahead and I guess I was going to just create a variable for us to remove the vowels from, but I think I'm going to actually collect the string from the user. So what we'll do here is we'll come up here and we're going to create a scanner object. We're going to call that scanner object console new scanner, and I'm going to explain this code here in a second for you beginner guys. System.n. I gotta wait for this to load here, but basically what I'm doing here in this line of code is, so I want to collect user input. So I'm going to prompt the user to enter in a string. So what I need in order to do that is I need to create a scanner object. So when you create an object, you're going to name it whatever you want. Usually by convention it's named console. I'm going to name it console. That's what my variable or my object's going to be called. And then I'm going to call the constructor. So whenever you see something like this called new, that means you're creating a new object in the scanner class. And then I'm just passing system.n. So that's kind of a parameter. So I'm not going to dive too much into that because this isn't really a creating objects video. But yeah, I'm creating a scanner object. It's from the scanner class, and I'm going to name it console. And I'm going to pass it system.in. I'm going to pass it the input from whatever the user types on the keyboard. And static, the reason why this is static is because, and I'll go over this a couple times, but basically static means I do not need to create an instance of this class that I'm creating. So if I didn't have static here, then I would need to create a dummy object to be able to use methods in the class. So this is saying, hey, you do not need to create an instance of this object. So that's why we put static there. Now it's giving me an error because this scanner class, it doesn't know where that's at. So we have to import it. So you can hover over that and hit import. So that is going to import the scanner class. So java.util, util is the package, and then scanner is one of the classes that is inside that util package that we can use. If I wanted to, I could delete this and put a star, and it would import all the packages or all the classes in the util. But I don't want to do that because we don't need to import all those classes. So let's just put scanner there. Okay, so now that I've created scanner object to get user input, and I've created the main method, but I don't have anything inside there. So let's go ahead and let's get that input from the user. So let's create two strings. We'll do string, we'll call input 1, and we'll initialize that to an empty string, and then we'll create another string variable called input 2, and we'll initialize that to an empty string as well. It's yellow right now because it's basically saying, hey, you've created a variable, but you're not using it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set input 1 equals to console.next. So basically what this is doing here is it's taking that console object and basically saying it's calling the .next method, which what that will do is get the input from the user. But first, before we get the input from the user, we got to prompt them. So we got to print something on the console down here. And ignore this hello world that's from my last program there. So let's do system.out.print. And this is just the, so this is basically the print method that's in the system class. So that by default we already have access to. So we don't need to import any classes or anything like that. That is already given to us. So what are we going to print to the screen? Hello, please enter a word. We'll say sentence. Sentence is easier because then they can put, so basically we're going to prompt the user here. We're going to print to the console, say, hello, please enter a sentence. And then we're going to use this object console and the .next method to capture whatever they enter on the keyboard. And then we're going to capture it and store it in a variable called input1. Okay, now let's just do that again. Except for let's create a second, or let's use our second variable here. That way we have two variables with input strings that we can run methods on. And what does it say here? Method print, oh, we forgot the L. So print ln. Okay, so now we have our scanner object and we've printed to the screen and we're collecting those inputs. Let's do some work. So let's do what we're supposed to do here and remove the vowels. So in input 1 and this one, let's implement a method that takes advantage of the method in the string class called replaceAll. So we're going to make two methods here. So we're going to go outside of our main method, and let's create two methods. So both of them are going to be static because we don't want to create an instance of the dummy class. We don't need to create any objects. So static, and then let's do public static. And then what are we going to return? We're going to return a string, because basically what we're going to do, well, let's type this out first. So we'll call this first method remove all vowels brute force. That's a long method name, but that's okay. And then we'll pass in our first input. And then we'll do the same, except for we're going to create another method called remove all vowels, and it'll just be, it won't be brute force. And what I mean by brute force is I just mean that we're going to kind of code it from scratch. We're not going to use the string library or the method that we find in the string library. So remove all vowels, and then let's pass in input 2. And then this is give us an error because we haven't created these methods yet. That's okay. Let's just get some comments here. Methods to remove all vowels from input string. So what we're doing here is method calls. That means we're calling methods because these methods that we create down here will not be used unless we call them. Okay, so the first one, remove all vowels. And we're going to pass in a string. We'll just call it input. End of method. We'll just call that method 1 for the comments. Okay, so the one that doesn't have brute force, we are going to use that method in the string class. So what that method is it's called replaceAll. So I was going to Google and show you guys the library and the Oracle library, kind of that method, but I don't really think there's any need for that. But just know that there is a method already created for us in the Java library in the string class called replaceAll. So what we need to do here is we're taking this input string, we're going to modify it, and then return a new string. So string, we'll say new string is what we're going to return. Because you got to remember, strings are immutable. So once we pass the string in, we can't remove the vowels and modify it. We have to kind of apply some method to it, and then it's going to create a new string, and then we're going to catch it. And I'll kind of explain that here in a minute. So we're going to take our input string, and then we're going to call replace all. Okay, so that's just basically saying that there's two arguments for the replace all method. So the first one is going to be a string that includes all the characters that we want to check for inside brackets. So we want to remove all the vowels. So we want to check for all the vowels, uppercase and lowercase. So A, E, I, O, U, A, E, I, O, U. So this is the first parameter in this replace all method. You will have a string of the characters that you want to remove from the string. So it'll check for every single one of these characters in this string, and then it'll replace it with this empty string. So the second parameter is saying, hey, this is what I want to replace any of these characters that you find, I want to replace it with this empty string. So pretty easy. I'm going to take that input string and then check for any of these characters. If it finds any, it's going to replace it with this empty string. Now, strings are immutable, so it's not going to actually modify this string here. It is going to create a new string, and we're going to pass that into our new string variable. So we created a new variable called newString, and then what we're doing is we're taking our input string passed in, we're going to call the replaceAll method, we're going to check for all these characters. If we find any, then we're going to replace it with an empty string. And then once we do that, we're going to store that new string without the vowels in a variable called newString. Now we just have to return the new string. Okay, pretty easy. So that one's done. Now our second method that we have to create or implement is called, we named it removeAll vowels brute force. So public just means that we want other classes and stuff to be able to access this method. That's okay. And then static again, because we do not want to create a dummy object. And then this one we are going to return a string as well. Okay, so return a string as well. We're going to call this one remove all vowels brute force. Same thing, we're going to pass a input string into it. We're just going to call that input. End of method 2. Now this one's going to be a lot more code. So this one we have to basically create this method ourselves. Now that's what the interviewers are going to want to see. Anybody can look up this method and implement it pretty easy, but we want to create it from scratch. Okay, so what we're going to do is kind of same thing. We're going to have a new string that we're going to create, because strings are immutable and we can't modify the input string that we passed in. That's just giving us an error right now because we need to return something. We don't have a return statement yet, but we'll have it soon. Okay. Okay, so now I'll explain this. We're going to do a for loop. I less than input dot length. Oops. Plus plus. Okay, so our for loop here, set it at 0, and then we're going to keep going or iterating until we get to the end of this string. So basically this is our for loop to iterate through the characters of our string. Okay. So basically what we need to do is take this string and iterate through all the characters and then find and then check to see if each character is a vowel or not. So I'm going to code this out and then I'm going to explain it. Okay, so basically we got our for loop. Basically we're going to have an if statement, and what we want to do is we're taking our input string and we're going to each character by passing an I, which is the index number. It's going to start out at 0, and then it's going to keep iterating to move to each character in the string. So the first time this goes around, let's say we pass in hello world. Basically our input that we pass in is going to be hello world. it's going to go to index char at index 0 because it starts at 0, and it's going to see that it is an H. It is going to convert that to lowercase, and it's going to also convert that into a character, and then that way we can pass that character into an isVowel method. We want to check if it's a vowel. This method we have to implement as well. So basically pass our string into this isVowel method to check if it's a vowel, and we have to implement that method as well here in a second. So basically if it's not a vowel, because strings are immutable, the easiest way or the best way to go about this is to just create a new string and only copy the characters that are not vowels. So let's just do our new string equals, if we grab this character in our input string and it's not a vowel, then we want to add it to our new string. Oop. So new string plus input dot char at index I. Okay, so I'll go over this one more time. Let's just get some comments in here. End of if statement. So what we're doing here is we're iterating through the string that we passed in. We're going to do that by calling the char add method, which is going to, the first time through this method, through our for loop, it's going to take our string, let's say, for instance, if it's hello world, char at index 0 is going to be H. It's going to convert it to a lowercase character. We're going to pass that lowercase character, which is an H, into the isVowel method. If it is not a vowel, then we want to add that character to our new string. If it is a vowel, we want to do nothing. So we'll just put in comments here, else do nothing. So this is inside of our for loop, so end of loop. So we have our if statement. If it is not a vowel, then let's add that character to the new string, and we keep doing that until we reach the end of the input string that we were given. If it is not a vowel, or if it is a vowel, I'm sorry, let's just do nothing. We don't have to code anything. That would just be a waste of code. Now at the end, once we iterate through every character in that string, we want to return our new string that has been built up with all the characters that are not vowels. Okay, so that is done, and now we just need to implement isVowel. So we need another method, so public static. We're returning a Boolean because basically we want to return true or false if it's a vowel or not. So we want to return Boolean, just means true or false for you beginner programmers. So isVowel is the name of the method that we're going to implement. End of method isVowel. What are we going to pass in there? We're going to pass this in there, which is going to be a character, because we're grabbing the character at this index of the string, and we're converting it to a lowercase character. So we're passing in a character, and we'll just call that C. Oh, so that's just supposed to be char. The keyword is char, not character. And then what are we going to do here? So we need something to check if that's a vowel. So let's create a string. The string is going to contain all the vowels, all the lowercase, because we've already converted it to lowercase up here. So A, E, I, O, U, I think that should be all the vowels. And then again, we're going to do another for loop. int I equals 0, I is less than, we could do the length of vowels.length, but since we already know this has 5 characters, let's just put 5 so we don't have to type out vowels.length. And then let's increment that by 1 every single time we go through the loop. End of loop. So basically this for loop is going to iterate through every single one of these characters and compare it to this character that we passed in to check if it's a vowel. So we were going to have an if statement to so if that character equals the we're going to call the char add method, and I'll explain this. We'll go over this here in a second. Then we want to return true. And then outside of our if statement, end of if, so we don't need to really put an else statement, we'll just put return false. Okay, add return statement. Oh, this should be outside of the loop, sorry. Okay, so let's go over this. So our isVal method is just basically going to take a character that we pass inside of there, and it's going to check if it's a vowel. Pretty easy. So we're going to have a string called vowels. We're just going to name it vowels. It's going to have all of our characters that we want to check for that are vowels. We're going to have a for loop to iterate through this string of vowels, which is 5 characters long. So if that character that we passed in is equal to, basically when we iterate through this, it's going to check to say if it's equal to any of these guys, return true. And then basically if that returns true, it'll never execute this statement, else it'll return false. Okay. Sorry about that. So let's see. We do have an error up here. What's the error? This is for remove all. Oop. So same thing. This is supposed to be outside of our loop. And then let's save this. And I think that should be it. Let's just kind of clean up some white space here. Okay, and then let's go ahead and run this program. Okay, so hello, please enter a sentence. Let's just put hello world. So that is going to use the brute force method. And then let's do another one. Oh, it's like freezing up on me. 1 second here. Come on. Okay, finally done freezing up. Okay, so our input 1 is going to be hello world. Our input 2, let's just, computer is freezing up here. Let's rerun this. So please enter a sentence. Hello world. Enter another sentence. Let's just do, why isn't that letting me, let's see here. Let's comment this out for now. And then the other thing that we forgot to do is, so basically when we call this, it's going to return a string. So new string 1, new string 2, and then let's print those new strings out. So we forgot to do this. Dot print line. Let's do brute force. So brute force was new string 1. We'll do the same thing here. This is not going to be the brute force method. This is going to be manual. Or, I'm sorry. Let's just do regular. Print out 2. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, guys, is I'm going to, let's just only use one input string. We only need that. That's fine. And let's just call this, actually, this is what I'm going to do. String 2. Let's just use hello world, the input, for both methods. That's fine. And let's just make sure they both work. Okay. So let's save that. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to prompt the user for an input string, and then I'm going to call both methods on that input string, and then I'm going to print the results. So print results. Let's just get rid of this. Let's save that, and then let's go ahead and run. Please enter a sentence. Hello world. Enter. Okay. So what did it do? Okay, so basically what this is working, it's just since I used console.next, it's just grabbing hello. So you can see it's just basically omitting world, but it's removing the vowels from hello. So let's just run this again, and that way I can kind of demonstrate this properly. So I'm just going to do hello. So the brute force method removed the E and the O, and the regular method removed the E and the O. So both methods were implemented. The brute force used the is vowel method and kind of had a little bit more code. The regular method that we called just took advantage of the replaceAll method in the string class. Okay, and that's it. Thanks for watching.